This one is Reimagining the Future, and it is being moderated by Sonya Stepanova, an artist and filmmaker who grew up in Toronto. In June 2023, she founded Davenport Aid Brigade, a mutual aid collective supporting Palestinian families in Cairo and Gaza.
Hello everyone, welcome. Final panel, Reimagining the Future. I just want to say that this whole weekend has really just lifted my spirits. I'm sure a lot of people relate, just all of us coming together, yeah. So our panel of experts today, I would like to introduce you. Firstly, we have Dr. Layal Shuman. Born and raised in Lebanon, she is an associate professor of design studies at Toronto Metropolitan University, where she focuses on critical design and creativity studies, critical university studies, and anti-oppression education frameworks. She is the co-director of SMACT, editor-in-chief of Rubik's, and co-president of the Arts SIG in the Canadian Association for Curriculum Studies. Dr. Shuman is also a member of Faculty for Palestine and has been very actively supporting the student movement. Then we have Justin Podur, a writer and podcaster based in Toronto. In 2019, he published his book Siege Breakers, which is a thriller novel imagining breaking the siege on Gaza. In 2019, he published this. And since 2023, the Anti-Empire Project has tracked the ongoing war and genocide. And finally, we have Dani Mitrovic, a local organizer with the Palestine Solidarity Neighborhood Riding Groups, which are grassroots, nonpartisan groups organizing their neighbors to end Canada's complicity in genocide and occupation through political advocacy, education, and community events. She is also active in BDS initiatives and a proud union member. Yeah, thank you again for being here. I wanted to start this discussion by sharing something with you all. This is a short piece that was written by Shehad, a writer and student who was born and raised in Gaza and is there right now. She is also a dedicated member of Davenport Aid Brigade, the mutual collective that I run, and she's been helping us with different programs in Gaza. I've been telling her all about this forum for months, and this is something that she wrote for me to share with you all today. So I'm just going to read directly now. A few days ago, I was sitting in a small cafeteria, a narrow corner where students go to catch a thread of internet connection that helps them submit exams and finish their assignments. The room was crowded with students as the final exam season had already begun. A conversation started between two girls sitting beside me. One of them was an interior designer. She was speaking in a tired voice about the houses and gardens she designs for people outside Gaza. She said that whenever she sketches a wide balcony, a large window, or a garden filled with light, she feels a sharp ache in her heart. She looks at the beauty she creates with her own hands and then lifts her eyes to the ceiling of the tent she lives under. She said that sometimes she cries deeply when she thinks about this painful contradiction, how she builds homes that resemble dreams for others while her own simple dream is just a real roof above her head. She also spoke about the frustration she feels when some clients object to a design or ask for changes. For them, it is simply a matter of taste. But for her, that very design feels close to a dream. Such are the harsh paradoxes of life. Others may possess our dreams, while to them, they are merely ordinary things that do not even deserve gratitude. During the war, we were ready to die for a sip of water. Just a sip of water. That simple thing, available almost everywhere in this world, yet so far beyond our reach. And there's a sentence that still echoes in my mind. We are still alive on what we know of life. Perhaps we have lost many of the basic conditions that allow a person to live with dignity. Perhaps even our simplest rights are no longer within reach. But there is no choice before us, either death or this version of life. I wanted to begin our conversation with this, not only because we have the obligation to amplify the voices of the oppressed, but also because grounding ourselves in the present, the real, awful conditions of our present, is critical for having any conversation about the future. We are not here today to imagine utopias that may rise from the rubble after the Epstein class and their allies destroy the whole world. We are having this conversation because we are living in times where it has been over 904 days of people in Gaza literally risking their lives to be able to show us what is happening on the ground. Not only exposing truly how sick, twisted, and evil Zionism really is, but also consistently telling us that we have to do something about this, not only for their sake, but also because this will not just be contained in Gaza. And yet, people around us, particularly young people, are not even doing the bare minimum. And how many of us have heard, what's the point if everything is only going to get worse anyway? Our ability to not only struggle, but also see our victory is actually shaped by our thoughts and perceptions, our subjective conditions. Even soldiers will not pick up their weapons if their morale is too low. As of now, I think it's safe to say that the ruling class has essentially taken control over the narrative of the future. We have to reckon with the fact that not only is the absence of vision holding us back from being able to actually unite in struggle over a shared political program, but it also puts us behind on a very critical front in this battle of ideas. If we are actually serious about building a movement, it is incumbent on us to take up the task of rectifying this with the gravity and the urgency that this moment requires of us. Everyone knows, whether it is just a gut feeling or through solid political convictions, that the current system does not work for the majority of people. Collapse is all around us, and if the ruling class is going to take advantage of all of these crises, then why can't we? Let me remind you all, the future does not exist. The shape it takes is entirely dependent on our actions in the present, and the first step to building a better world is imagining it. So, on this note, I would like to turn to our panelists. Justin, can you please talk to us a bit about reimagining the future?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. You said a lot of the things that I had thought needed to be said. So let's just start from the main one for me that I wanted to start with, which is nobody knows what's gonna happen in the future. And like, if you have to get up and look in the mirror and say that in the morning, that's what you have to do. Because so much propaganda so much war propaganda specifically, is about the future. It's about it's about Israel telling you what's going to happen. From October 7th, when all of those pigs went on TV and said, we're gonna go and kill all of Amalek, and we're gonna cleanse Gaza, and we're gonna colonize Gaza. They were talking about the future, and they did not know what was gonna happen. And the future they described at many different points, through over these 3.5 years. Was it 3.5? Yeah, 2.5. At many different points during these years has crumbled. And it's so hard to remember, because part of perpetually presenting you with the future is taking away your ability to remember what just happened, or what is even happening. So how many of us remember America's pier? You guys remember the aid pier? It's gone. What was that supposed to do? How many people remember one of that lady, Daniela something? She would go and talk about colonizing the whole of Gaza, replacing them. Well, that didn't happen. The general's plan, remember that one? Remember how the north, they were going to cleanse the north and then gradually cleanse the south? That didn't happen. All of the things that they talked about, not all of them, many of the things that they talked about with the same confidence have not happened. And they lie about the future the same way they lie about the present and the way they lie about the past. Lying is part of how they colonize your mind. And making you inhabit their future is a huge part of what they do. And when I talk about the war, and when I think about the war, and when I'm trying to analyze it for one of these videos that I make, I try to describe what happened. It's enough work to describe what happened. It's enough work to remember what just happened and connect it to what's previously happened. That doesn't mean, because there are different relationships with the future. There's a relationship with the future that involves prediction, which is nonsense. There's no predicting the future. Nobody knows the future. But there's a relationship with the future which is planning. Like China's 5-year plan. Or, they make a plan for how much renewable energy they're going to roll out. Or Iran. Iran is unfolding a military plan. It's very clear that they have certain things that they're looking for, and when those things happen, they already know what to do because they've already projected, they've already planned scenarios, they already have an if-then kind of relationship. Planning makes sense. Adapting to what happens makes sense. Having plans and having a plan has a lot to do with having an objective. And so what I would say about people like us is don't worry too much about what's gonna happen. Don't worry too much about what they're saying they're gonna do. Worry about what you want. We have to think about what we want. And the future can be, our power to determine the future depends a lot on what we want. And if we want certain things and we take action to achieve those things, a lot of the time we can achieve what we want. And a lot of the time that we don't, it has to do with us not necessarily being on the same page as everybody that we thought was on our team about what we want. So this is, where we can get into things like Syria and divisions in the movement that can prevent us from reaching the desired future when you realize that not everybody desires the same thing. So that's what I would say to start. Don't be intimidated by what they say is going to happen. They don't know and we don't know. And think more about what we want and how to get there.
Yeah, thank you. I think that one way to approach this question also is understanding that so much of what the Zionist entity is doing is just psychological warfare, right? Like it's deliberate, and they study the mind and psychology to figure out how to preemptively demoralize people. And not to, I did warn you that we'll be a bit avant-garde with the structure of this panel, so I did want to ask you a little bit briefly to talk a little bit about your book Siegebreakers and the writing process. And if you were to write another work of fiction like this, what that would look like. And I've just been reflecting a lot on the role of fiction for raising people's revolutionary consciousness and supporting them with being able to, as you said, imagine what they actually want.
Yeah, thanks. So it was written, it was published in 2019, I guess. It was written around 2014 during that war. And it was one of those wars on Gaza. It was the longest one until this one. 51 days, I think. Lots of genocidal attacks. And the same kinds of things, but also some incredible resistance operations that were like, whoa, what is happening there? Because I had always been I had come through more of a non-violence place. That's not really where I am anymore. We don't need to elaborate too much on that. But like, I've studied the history, and the history does not bear out, I don't think, the non-violence hypothesis, let's say. So I wanted to write something where I was like thinking about a couple of things. I was thinking about the propaganda of action and thriller fiction, where like it's always this American hero and he's always fighting terrorists and he's restoring the status quo by doing violence against these terrorists. And I thought like this genre is like some kind of universal genre of some hero fighting for justice, and then by setting it in this settler colonial context, they're kind of using your love of justice and your wanting to identify with that kind of heroism and courage with this kind of violence and empire. And I thought, well, what if we write an action thriller where the Palestinians are the heroes? And I just like really just adopted that genre completely, and then some spy versus spy and things like that. But that was the idea. And then I was sort of like thinking, what would it take for the siege to be broken? Like specifically, like it was clear to me that watching all of these wars from 2008 and 2012 and 2014, that what people in Gaza were really fighting for was an end to the siege, which is not like a natural fact. It was imposed in 2005. Like, it's not like Gaza has been under siege forever. And so I was trying to think like what kind of situation could break the siege. And so that was like the premise of the thriller. And I have written a couple of short stories for my Substack along the same lines. One was like I imagined like a post-Nuremberg, or like a post this war trial where they were bringing some media figures in particular to justice. So there was someone named Gorman who went to jail for incitement, and then there was someone named Ghassan who had an ambiguous sentence at the end. So I wrote that, and I had another story too where it was like the beginning of this Nuremberg tribunal, where like a lawyer from Yemen was making the case that these crimes against humanity were so severe that it warranted a big trial. So again, trying to imagine a desirable future, what justice after this war would look like, how to break the siege. Fiction is a great way to like think through that kind of problem, right? Because it's almost like if military strategists play war games to try to let's game this out. Let's see what it would actually take. So that was sort of the process.
Yeah, thank you. And you can definitely tell that it's very researched in great detail. And the speculative part of it's nothing that seems unrealistic at all. So thank you. So now we're going to move on to Dr. Shuman, Layal, and I guess I'll do a little refresh on the bio that you are a university professor who is currently just working in an institution such as the university, which if it wasn't clear before, it certainly is very clear that there's an idea of what universities could be like, and then there is how they operate in this current moment. And I know that you have work exploring these different questions, so I'd love to hear more about that.
Hi, everybody. Is that okay? I hate mics. I read this book. It's called Imagination, a Manifesto, by Ruha Benjamin, a professor of African American Studies at Princeton, who made me think a lot about the relationship between imagination, imaginaries, and realities. And I'm going to bring that to the university and to my work. One of my research projects is on reimagining universities for sustainable and just futures with that. I use two conceptual frameworks, or let's call them imaginaries, okay? The first one is the idea of the university as an arm of the state where its role and function is to support economic competitiveness. All of us are capitalist subjects, and we become that with time. As professors, we are all fighting for resources because the state, the governments are not supporting us. We teach gigantic classes, makes relationship with students so much harder. Students also become obsessed about going to the workforce, like hating those of us who do a little bit of politics or critical thinking in the class because they want to learn whatever the trend is. And as a design professor, I face that a lot because I also teach anti-capitalist design. So there's that imaginary of what the university is. And then there's the other part, another imaginary, which, and they're plural. So in that, the corporate university is also colonial. So they're plural, but I'm just simplifying things. The other side of things is thinking about the university as the role of the university is a space of gathering, just like we are sitting here together. We come together, think about knowledge, ideas, and how we could support each other for our individual and collective liberation and social transformation. That's another totally different imaginary of the university. A lot of other ideas go into that: anti-racist, feminist, anti-colonial, decolonial, critical pedagogy. There's a lot of also imaginaries within that, right? The idea is that both of them, when I wrote the proposal for this research study, it's not that I'm thinking of the idea that doesn't exist. I have colleagues here at TNU with me. In our pedagogies of every day, we actually practice that imaginary, whether, let's say, from an anti-racist stance, from different stances. We're living it. It's not in the future, one day I'm gonna wake up and become an anti-racist professor. We try to live it. We are political at all, it's easy because we subscribe to that. But that on daily basis, especially at universities such as TNU that are less funded, and where the corporate discourse becomes more, because we want to compete, we want to prove that we are a university, right? For us to do that, that means we need to be all trendy, all entrepreneurial, and all cutting edge, right? So we could feel it more. So that imaginary also exists. And these are realities. I think that is what's important. What I've been thinking about in my work is that, yes, sometimes it's not like what the Israelis want. I'm going to give you an example from personal experience. I am from southern Lebanon and from a village that is named Sur or Tar. It is the last escalation for the Israeli forces. We've been hearing again about them going to the Litani River, okay? And a lot have been saying, oh, this is an idea from the 1990s, right? Think about it as an imaginary of this Zionist regime wanting to go up until the Litani River, covering my village and a lot of other villages. That is one idea, right? Is it going to happen, not going to happen? If you think about Southerners from Lebanon, I mean, this idea, we've been fighting it. Some days we wake up, they're dominating. Who's from Southern Lebanon here? Other than my sister? Is there anybody else? My sister? Okay, so let's say, not my sister. Lisa, not you. Okay, so let's say the Israelis do actually occupy us. What are we gonna do? What is gonna happen? What do you think happens? What do you think our aunties are gonna do? Our tetas?
Live right on the other side of the Litani River, I guess.
Fight. What are they gonna do?
They're gonna fight to just
Fight, right? Because in our imaginary, this is our land. It's always going to be our land. Come in, we're going to go after it. So this is an example of realities, and the way I've been thinking about imagination is this activity, the imaginaries that exist, but then the trick is, which one are we participating in? Because we are, in a way. Or not, or fighting. Yeah.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's really interesting. I especially appreciate appreciate your reflection on working in these institutions where we know that in their current setup they are not viable and are working against our interests, and yet we can't just go, okay, well, whatever, go like ignore all the universities. And so this practice of embodying the future that you would actually like to see in the way you operate in these spaces in the first place. So now we'll move on to Dani, and yeah, I would just really love to hear, I mean, not just me, I'm sure the room as well, about how this practice of reimagining the future, how you engage with it as somebody who is doing just community organizing in your neighborhood.
Yeah, thank you. And I feel just so great to be invited. The whole weekend has been, like you said, exactly what we needed. So I'm going off of my notes because, as friends know, Sonya said this was timed, and when I heard that, like, once I get started, I can just keep going. So in the interest of keeping it tight, when I was first asked to be on the panel, I had a moment of panic wash over me because I'm not an academic, I'm not a pundit or a well-known figure, I'm not a labor leader, I'm just a very regular citizen who goes to work every day and comes home very tired. But that panic and self-doubt, I think, is at the heart of the problem when it comes to the future. Because the future is every single person's birthright. And when it comes to how we behave in very essential ways, and I don't mean like us as anti-imperialists or activists in our community, I mean us in the imperial core and beyond, I think that we've forgotten that. So I guess my credentials are that I was born, like all of us, with a right to the future. And the imperialists have done their very best to murder the future, not just in the open and obvious ways, by massacring whole populations of our siblings, by torturing Mother Earth to the point of total collapse. Everyone is very aware of the dangers that are shortening our existential horizon. But what I've noticed in my daily life, at work, and in organizing is that they've murdered the future in our souls and in our minds. I'm going to use some sentimental and sincere language because I think that they've taken so much dignity from us. It's a visceral thing that we, in every way, are encouraged to numb. And so we don't really even feel entitled to a better present, never mind a future. And what I want to talk about is the anti-imperialist left as the movement where regular people in our neighborhoods can become reacquainted with our love for the future and how it will help us be more effective now. So we've been groomed by the Epstein class to believe that the future is not really our business. It's out of our scope, of influence, of our expertise. We should stick to what we know, which is our little lives, in our homes, in our circles. And we think about this week, next month, maybe retirement, although if you're a millennial or younger, apparently we're not even allowed to dream about that. But nonetheless, we do dream. Sometimes each of us has a little fantasy about what the future could be like, not just for us in our lives, but beautiful ideas for the world. But we relegate that to the realm of childish or ideal hopes. We almost experience that impulse to imagine as twinged with pain, something that nags at us while we contend with reality. And what I want to say today is that that is a scam. That is a capitalist scam. So the imperialists would like nothing better than for us to be very small, debased, reduced, living like hamsters almost. I have a lot of pet rodents. So we go to work, we worry, we cook, we clean, we have some enrichment time outside of our cage with our cage mates, and we sleep. And if we look at our society culturally, they've succeeded very well in limiting our scope to that tiny, predictable arena. What they absolutely don't want us to feel is indignity, to really feel how much they've taken from us. The indignity of living under monsters who claim the right to diminish or deny anyone's future. They've made a world where it is painful to feel fully alive, fully human, to care and to dream. And so we don't practice it, we let it atrophy. But I think that feeling of indignation, letting ourselves really feel the lack of what we've been denied, is the key. I'm sure everyone here is full of that rage and sadness a lot of the time. But from my work in organizing, my perspective is that we have trouble metabolizing that grief and rage into something that makes others want to join us and to stay. We're all correctly shocked at the lack of shame, at the normalization of horrors. It's a societal loss of sensitivity and a collective sense of dignity. But it can be rebuilt, and it starts with reminding each other how low our standards have come. You and I live in the mythical West, and we're not guaranteed eyesight or keeping our teeth. Our glasses, our dental isn't covered, and this is supposed to be, the land that is exporting the ultimate standard elsewhere. Indigenous communities here have to boil water, not elsewhere, here. We have accepted such diminished expectations for ourselves, such mundane cruelty. We walk past our sleeping siblings on the street and then wonder how large-scale murder is acceptable. These conditions are unbearable to any fully alive human, yet they've managed to make us bear them by narrowing our realm of feeling and of imagining. What's missing is the potent desire for the future. It's our job to reignite that capacity to dream big and provide the movement where those visions can be acted upon. If we think of revolutionaries, they've always been intense lovers of the future. People trying to make a reality that hasn't existed before. We know very much what we are against, but it's our role as anti-imperialists to remind people how much they can be for. We all feel that lack from how sick our world is, but trying to soothe that lack through shopping, scrolling, numbing, arguing, it's what keeps us from soberly looking at and naming the problem. The problem is that they have taken too much from all of us. And it's not a competition, it's not a badge of honor to endure, that's their vision. Feeling that horrible ache of the difference between what we think life could be like and what it currently is only so unbearable because we feel we really can't do anything about it. That's where we step in. To create a movement that not only loves the future, but shows people that it's their right and the key to their liberation to love it, to picture it, to fight for it too, from their community out to all of society. Not in a delusional manner, but to soberly look at our circumstances, feel how wretched they are, but instead of self-medicating with entertainment, distractions, or comforting routines, narrowing our expectations and lowering our standards, which is no medicine at all, we provide the actual antidote. Currently, for the general public, political work and organizing has the reputation of being extracurricular, sacrifice, something we give to others, something on the fringes of our daily obligations. For many of us, it's a consolation, both in the sense of finding comfort with our comrades, but also as a stand-in for the power that we lack. Our challenge is to make it understood by as many people as possible as the obvious answer to the problem of the future and how we actually shape our lives. So it isn't a sacrifice for something extra, it is essential and rehumanizing to be politically active. Our anti-imperialist movement has to give people a taste of the future we want. That was a slip, I said government, we don't have an anti-imperialist government. That's the future I want. In the broadest sense, earlier panelists yesterday were talking about purity. We don't have to agree at this juncture, this powerless juncture, on the exact future. Just one that we can show to others where everyone is safe, has a full belly, a decent home, an education, glasses if they need them, one that has the utmost respect for life, one where the advancements of society benefit everyone, are available to everyone, a belonging that says, this isn't good enough for me, it's not good enough for anyone. And if you feel that despair, you can come imagine something very different with us. The saying is that socialists are exiles from the future. That implies loneliness, separation. We aren't exiles. We are ambassadors from the future. We remind everyone through how we organize what kind of culture and vision we have, that we can be greedy for a better future than the death on offer from imperialism. Our ability to imagine the future is one of the defining human characteristics. If we activate that universal instinct, we are also responsible for nurturing it and making it a reality.
Context of community organizing, not being able to present a vision also really holds us back with how we organize, because if we are all somewhat on the same page about where we are going with this, then it turns to, okay, how close are we getting there? And we can actually evaluate how much progress we are making, rather than sort of having a more vibes-based kind of, oh, a better world is possible notion. where then we are organizing more, as you said, for the sake of being around like-minded people or, appeasing our conscience, that at least we tried to do something, kind of thing. So now I wanted to ask a few questions that I think we could have some fun with this. Just some shorter questions for you all to answer. The first thing I would love to hear from all of you about is, since the future that we build is based on the present, in your assessment, what are some crises, perspectives, issues, etc., that, in your opinion, are critical to bring into and center in our reimagined future? And if you could also add if there are any concrete steps that we can take right now to bring that to reality. And I think we can go in order. Yeah.
Hi. I forgot my answer, but I'm gonna... I was thinking about, and I think this is inspired by, I'm trying to remember who said it, but it's inspired by like the talks over the last 2 days. Somebody was talking about contradictions and false contradictions. Is it this morning?
Yeah.
Because I was thinking about, and I'm gonna give you examples from like my life. Okay. So one of the things I get into arguments with sometimes is this idea of industry ready versus, especially again, I come from design, which is very much adjacent to all the things. So industry ready, and whenever we talk about adding theory or principles or politicizing or thinking differently about the practice, they kind of make you feel like you're done, like you're industry ready, we need our students industry ready and all of that. And I think one of the scary things for me is that we have created this false contradiction between that. If I do, let's say in my teaching, emphasize the relationship between design and racial capitalism, or talk about like tech innovation and this obsession with innovation and racial justice, like this is not good for them to be ready for the industry and all of that. And I feel like this is a bit dangerous because, it's not just, these are not my ideas. A lot of critical pedagogue, anti-racist feminist scholars talk about that. It's especially important when students, and I feel I'm an example of that, when people come from working class, more poor communities and communities at the margins, that we know exactly well all those systems of oppression, that we have the discourse to and the ability to position our lives in relation to those bigger systems, including our fields of practice and our professions. It is one of the ways actually that could make us break and dismantle and change things. I think this is very important, and I think one of the actual things that we could do is for students, because I feel like my colleagues are hopeless except for those of us who are here, but like students to refuse to become a tool just for the labor force, that sort of like that obsession, and for them to feel insulted when their professors or their programs make them want to become just entrepreneurial capitalist subject. They should act like they're insulted. When my colleagues use the words such as curriculum as product, the service we provide, our customers, our students, I flip. I'm like annoying. I'm like killjoy, flip. No, I don't provide services. The curriculum is not a service. Students are not my clients. I am not paid by the students, hence I need to be no. And this is, it sounds like a small example, but I think these are the things that we could do. And I feel like for students, because there is this idea and this imaginary that we are a corporation, I feel resist that. And those of us who do try to incorporate things that are a bit different, support us, take the courses, and don't do what Doc Ford said, take basket weaving courses, like they're important and the arts is important. So yeah.
So I think I understood the question to be about like crises.
Did I misunderstand?
No, you were great. So I think that like the relationship between propaganda about the future and our feelings or emotions, I guess, what are they trying to induce in us with these stories about the future? And a lot of what they're trying to induce is despair, fear, anxiety. Anxiety is fundamentally about spending too much time in an undesirable future that somebody else has sketched out for you. AI is going to steal your job. You're not going to have any jobs because of AI. And that AI is a funny one because I sort of think AI is exploding, like that future is sort of exploding in front of our eyes as I speak. And so like to me it's like reimagining the future is also letting the future be the realm of imagination and not fear and not anxiety and not induced despair. And so, the thing that I've been talking about in videos recently is this nuclear issue and, the nuclear threat. So like, there's this thing about like, oh, they only used nuclear weapons once on Japan. Actually, they've been using nuclear weapons every day because every time you threaten nuclear destruction, you're using the nuclear weapon as a threat. And that is the principal use of this weapon, is to freak people out and try to induce surrender before having to actually do the work of subduing and occupying and defeating this, in this case, Iran's military, which is going to be basically impossible, I think, for them. I mean, predicting the future. But when you look at the balance of forces and you look at what the strategies of the two sides are, so the nuclear threat, nuclear anxiety, kind of apocalypse anxiety, ultimately that is a weapon of psychological warfare too. It's a weapon of, if you don't give Zionists what they want, which is, I don't know, perpetual genocide on whoever they feel like, forever. Because they don't even really know what they want, right? Like, they're also driven by this incremental, destructive urge that they have. I don't think they have if they got the litany, they'd keep going. If they when they get what they want, they keep going. If Iran falls, they're going to go attack Egypt and Turkey. If they fall, they're going to go for China. They'll go for whatever the next thing is. That's how they're driven. And billionaires, they're not satisfied with their billions. They want trillions. If they had trillions, they'd go for quadrillions. So they are sketching these futures of inevitability for us, for our consumption, for our to induce certain states in us in the present as part of their strategy. So for me, it's like I would rather reframe the crisis not in terms of what they can do with these weapons, or even what climate change will do if it's unchecked. If climate change is going to destroy the Earth, if it's unchecked, then let's check it, right? If there's damage done to Earth, let's restore it. So, none of these things are inevitable except for what they want us to feel. And so if you remember, if you think of the future as this battle over how you feel right now and what you're able to do based on that, I think you're on a better track.
I'm glad. I just realized we didn't check on our crises before. I was like, what if we all have the same crisis? Because for me, the vital one and the one that has the strongest tendency to make people feel paralyzed with hopelessness is the environment. The figures are really staggering in the same way that when human lives reduced to statistics have come out from Gaza, it's almost like a thought-canceling number or scale of horror. So in the first 2 weeks of the war on Iran, 5.6 million tons of greenhouse gases were released. That's the same as the annual input of 84 countries combined. We see stats like that every week regarding the climate, and they kind of obliterate your mind with the magnitude. There's a very accurate sense of increasing danger that in turn increases our sense of impotence, which is already really high. So I think it's a good question because it addresses the criticism put to many futurist projects historically, which is that of utopianism. Reimagining the future and then working towards it, like Sonya said, it isn't about delusions or positive vibes. I'm a millennial. I grew up in like a glorious time of environmental messaging that turned out to be BS, and that's not going to get us through. Climate change is a concrete problem that is already wreaking havoc. The point of reimagining the future is rediscovering our power. Like Justin said, if it needs to be checked, let's check it. We can do that. And our responsibility to tackle things. It's about taking back the narrative. Gonna quote Edward Said here, but he said, "The power to narrate or to block other narratives from forming and emerging is very important to culture and imperialism and constitutes one of the main connections between them." So we're on a terrible path. What are we going to do about it? Again, I think it comes back to remembering how to be really alive and reminding others. I can't educate someone on all the scientific information and political history of climate change in one interaction, but I can tap into a universal bond. Everyone loves nature. Everyone appreciates it. Sometimes when I see a bee, like I want to cry, and that's not absurd. What's absurd is how much they ask us to forget that feeling, to live with this cognitive dissonance, and to accept that this is how it must be, that we have no power over it. It's a massive problem, but we do see glimmers of hope and different modes. They exist. We're encouraged not to look at the successes socialist states have had. It's our business in every sense, despite how small and helpless we're made to feel. It encompasses everything we care about as anti-imperialists: war, the military-industrial complex, resource extraction, indigenous rights. People have become very, very accustomed to the idea of world-ending events, climate collapse, nuclear war, like we're just supposed to manage the downfall. We're very accustomed to horror and shame, and it becomes our mode, imposed by them. We were told that it was our fault for not recycling, which we know is a lie. And so I think climate is the issue that really exposes who our enemies are, the enemies of life itself, and that we are capable, we can act on our love for this nature that we're a part of, but only as a collective. They are destroying this beauty, and we can defend the planet's right to life and safety the same way we do for each other. There have been floods in Hawaii recently, and I don't know if anyone is following that, but really the only difference to people's survival and how they've been able to react is that they have communities set up and practiced in supporting each other and in environmental work, and that's made all the difference. There's still so much destruction, but yeah, so the motivation has to come from letting yourself remember how much you love this world and its potential, and then you'll have the motivation and essentially the organization to act on it. We can't let the statistics, whether it's in Gaza or across our beautiful planet, kind of shut down our minds and make us feel completely paralyzed.
You've touched on something that I think the sort of most maybe popular thinker who talks about this right now is Ali Qadri, this notion that we have entered this economy of accumulation of waste and the destruction of the planet, just mass murder all around. And I think that, yeah, it can definitely absolutely be paralyzing, and especially as the list of victims of Zionism just continues to grow, we do have to really remember that there will be a day after this at some point, and we can start preparing for it right now. So I'm thinking about, even for example, we talk a lot about how Gaza is now the highest concentration of children with amputations in the world. Are we right now moving in any way to create a world that is more accessible to them? Like, can we think in terms of, okay, so after all of this ends, are they just not going to be able to get into a lot of buildings? And starting to implement these types of practices in our organizing right now. So I have a couple other questions, and then I think we can do a Q&A if people have cues today. But anyway, so it's, as you said, as you've all touched on, it's a very human impulse to desire a better world, to struggle for it, to imagine it, and this was actually like something that movements before us were very focused on and active about. We've been, as humans, involved in this project of building a better world for our entire existence, and I also think a lot of times in our organizing, we are trying to do things that already have existed the whole time, actually. Like, I'm thinking about community building. It's such a big thing we're focused on, even though that's how humans have survived. That's why we're here right now, because our ancestors had community. So, in the spirit of unlocking our imaginations and also avoiding reinventing the wheel, what are some policies, ideologies, frameworks, whatever part of this resonates with you, either from the present or the past, that we can emulate?
I'll go.
Sorry, I'm as the moderator, I guess I thought somebody would just get all.
Okay, right. So, I'm representing today, but this question made me think of something that's often said in my family, who are Yugoslavian, about the former Yugoslavia. Whenever they reminisce or we talk about the current situation, they say it was a beautiful idea and it'll never happen again. And actually, Sonya and I talked because years ago I went to a conference by Yugoslavians in the diaspora. Which is very interesting to be in the diaspora from a country that only exists in the imagination now, about the relationship of past struggles, past movements, past successes on our ability to imagine now. So on the left, we often idolize the struggles and successes of the 20th century as a golden era that we want to return to. This nostalgia really weighs on our imagination and on our ability to produce the results we so admire in the revolutionaries of the past. So the thing about partisans, let's say in Yugoslavia, or any other example that we look up to, is that all of those people were futurists by virtue of being revolutionaries. They were picturing and fighting for a kind of society and political structure that hadn't existed where they were before. The horizons that they were chasing were immense. And they achieved that by being disciplined students of their own time. They learned everything they could from those that fought before them, but then crucially, they used that knowledge to investigate and interpret their present, their conditions. If we really admire them, that's the example that we have to follow. We also have to be dedicated to understanding the specific contours of our time, our cultures, the historical forces as they're being expressed now, using that immense gift of their experience. Even in our art, and I'd love to know how you feel about this, but we imitate their revolutionary style. But for them, that style was modern and an avant-garde approach to getting to the hearts of those in their time. We shouldn't emulate the form, but the function of that art. And we look longingly to their achievements, but in their own time, they were also just one cohort in generations. In generations and generations of a human history of subjugation, as are we. For most of human history, this has been our struggle to take up. It's an honor to be able to take up the baton and to try and carry it forward. Everything that is good or worthy in our lives now is the product of the dreams of humans who came before us. So much of what we cherish was just a twinkle in their eye. We can't lament our circumstances, and we undermine our strengths and advantages when we think of past struggles as glory that has passed us by. They faced monarchs, imprisonment, the use of secret police and intelligence surveillance goes back more than a century, murderous colonial technologies, they faced exile. We feel we face extensive and pervasive powers now, but we also have tools that people in the past would have found astoundingly beneficial. My great-grandparents organized against fascists with only an elementary school education and with a sliver of awareness of global politics and the situation in general than we have now. But what they lacked in knowledge, they made up for in will, conviction, and discipline. So I know this is supposed to be about specific examples, and I'll just be quick, and I think I didn't want to elaborate too much on who these people are, because I assume a familiarity, but either way. Antonio Gramsci wrote about the war of position, and I think that's important. He insisted that we have to capture power over culture. It's a very big task, and in his time, he targeted universities and press as areas of immense influence. Of course, Gramsci didn't have to deal with the CIA or Mossad networks, and there are very sophisticated methods developed over time to control media. But he did all this from prison, so we don't really have excuses. I also like to look at the example of the utopians of the 1800s. They were figures in the belly of the beast like us, such as Fourier and Bellamy, who constructed very detailed visions and projects of utopian societies. And it's really stunning when you see like how they played with possibility, but that's almost completely disappeared from our popular culture. Even Star Trek isn't what it used to be. And more importantly is looking at Marx's critique of those utopians, because again, this is where we benefit so much from not reinventing the wheel. In that time, they did a long job of really hashing out how to combine that power that imagining the future has to motivate and change minds with the concrete methods and analysis that could get us there. Because utopian thinking isn't a way to a political program, but it is the very first reflex and the reaction that ignites the will to act. And we've lost that popularly. Lastly, I think historical and present examples that work to kind of shock us out of our timeless stupor, where it feels like capitalism is endless and universal, is the story of the levelers and the diggers. They were those who experienced the painful birth of capitalism in England, and they rose up against being pushed off of the common land. And when you read their history, it's kind of shocking that many of us have less of a sense of dignity and entitlement than a peasant in the 1600s. It's not a good feeling. And Cuba siempre. I always try to spread the story of how Cubans completely changed the family code in their national law system. It's a beautiful piece of legislation, and learning how it was created puts all of our supposed democracy and Western values to shame. It's one of many examples of why they don't want Cuba to live, because of its potential to show us a different world in real time, so close to home. And when we feel discouraged or depressed about being in the West with all of its evils, we have to remember what Che told us, which is, I envy you. You North Americans are very lucky. You are fighting the most important fight of all. You live in the belly of the beast.
Did you say reinventing the wheel or not? No, I'm talking to Sonya. Just trying to remember the question. I think I do.
Just specific, like if you could take something from the past or present policy, copy paste into now, what would it be?
Okay, I think two things. There was a reinventing. I have an image of a wheel somewhere. It's the idea of, I feel, us embracing the concept, the imaginary of the university as the space for public good is so important. I feel, I don't know why we have just become so okay with this corporate university. And also this concept of free education and universities, I feel it's doable. It would require billions invested in education, in public education and public universities, but we are investing billions in weapons, so there is money. But I feel we gave up on that for some reason, and also we kind of no longer feel those institutions are part of our neighborhoods and communities, because obviously they became more corporate. But I think we should not subscribe to that imaginary, but more of what these spaces are doing for all of us. I think that is important. And the ways in which institutions have attacked the Palestine solidarity movement is just a glimpse of what I'm trying to say, because a lot of things wouldn't have happened if you want to think about who were in Canada the institutions that were most aggressive, these are the ones that had most investments, let's say, and like they profited from the genocide, right? Let's compare TMU with U of T, with McGill, and all of those. So there's something there, right? When we take that back and those institutions become ours, they belong to us, they are for our good, and we no longer need the donors and the monies that are invested in them. It shouldn't be even like the idea that weapons are being innovated and we are part of this is just so insane. But I think now we feel comfortable with, and I think we need to shift that. And I feel like we have, and I'm not talking about all of us here, but in general, we're okay with it. We're okay with universities not being free, and we're okay with investing in billions, and we're not questioning why, let's say, Ontario is the province that is investing the least in universities and what that means for our values or philosophies or what we think of education. So there are things that exist, but I feel like we've kind of gotten used to it, and I think that's also scary.
Definitely, yeah. As you spoke, Dani, earlier about just why are our standards so low in the first place?
So let me make it all a little more bloody-minded. South Lebanon. My colleague John Elmer loves this story of Khiam prison. Khiam is currently being fought over, but in 2000. Khiam was the site of a gigantic Zionist torture prison. And everybody in that prison was told by their captors that they were never going to leave that prison alive. And then Hezbollah liberated South Lebanon, and the prisoners were knocking on the doors, and people came and got them out. They were like, "Get me out of here." And they walked out of that prison. So, you know, when you look at Iran's missile program, they reverse engineered some missiles that they got from Libya and Syria, and now they have missiles that they've disabled the missile defense of NATO, you know, or whatever CENTCOM, whatever they call themselves. They are destroying aircraft on the ground that were supposed to be bombing them with impunity. That was, you know, the seeds of that were planted decades ago. They were working on this program for decades. When you think of in Gaza, the resistance there, would it help if I moved it closer? Are you turning it up because I'm keeping it far? Is that? Sorry, it's like we're in a vicious cycle. Feedback loop. So, you know, they built tunnels. They followed what the Israelis did, and they understood their doctrines, and they built almost like a conventional army. Again, taking decades to do that. So, like, when you think of the future, like what the battle will be like, never mind, like, you know, how nice it'll be after we win, but like, if you're thinking about the battle of the future, like, how do you prepare for that on a horizon? And, you know, I always make this quip with my fellow activists, is like, okay, if you can't see it in 5 years, I'll settle for a 100-year plan. I'll settle for a 50-year plan. Like, what, you know, however long it takes, like, that's the kind of thinking I think to do is, you know, what is it gonna take, and how do we build that over however long it takes to get there? So those are all examples from the resistance. You know, and for people who, if you get your hands on Yahya Sinwar's book, The Thorn and the Carnation, the book is mostly, like, it takes place over decades, but basically the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and it's like, that book is about preparation. It's basically a book about how they prepared for this fight, and it's from the person who, you know, was at least one of the masterminds of the whole thing. So I think those are good examples.
Yeah, definitely. It's recognizing it as psychological warfare, playing the long game, and also understanding that ingenuity is also a weapon, and that's a weapon that humans will always have on our side. So we are short on time, so I'm going to ask the final question, and just please keep in mind that we're short on time in your responses. But I wanted to leave this off just to remember that we are having this conversation in order to apply this to our organizing, how we move forward in the world. So I was curious to hear your thoughts and reflections about what are some blockages that people have with reimagining the future, and if you have any notes on how this can be addressed.
Okay, so I think the blockages. Okay. I'm gonna say something. I don't know if it's a blockage, but I think whether or not we are aware, we are, again, along the same lines of those imaginaries, we are participating in those imaginaries, and I think the more we subscribe to one that is, let's say, the tech bros imaginary of what a future is, and then everything else that we do is useless because it is not aligned with that, the more I think awareness is so important, and what is it that we're participating in, and which ones we want to amplify, and how are we fighting the other, because on any given day, and I really don't feel the future and the present are that far. I feel it's not like that. It's like more happening. So I feel like awareness is so important, and how are we participating? Because we are. I don't know if that's a blockage. What is the blockage? The dominance of those, and us thinking that it's outside of us and we're not participating in a way. Is that a blockage? Maybe.
I think the biggest blockage is how captured our time is by capitalist culture. Sonya likes to say, "Oh, you don't have time? Show me your screen time." But to dream, you have to have time to rest, and we aren't really set up to do that. Even when we do have leisure time, we often spend it in ways that don't nurture that liberatory imagination. We lose time to scrolling, to consuming capitalist media, kind of passive activities that often leave us with the same feeling of lack and dissatisfaction that we were running away from, but with the added numbness and depression and frustration. But I think that there's an opportunity there in that we're already accustomed to spending time thinking about and wanting things we can't have. We're surrounded by that. That's consumerist culture. So, we look at celebrity and not us, but broadly speaking, at wealth, at glamour, at success under capitalism, it's shoved down our throats. And I think to address it, we have to be intentional about surrounding ourselves and others with hopeful visions and ways to work on that vision. Political work has to move culturally from something that's taboo and private and fringe, or in the case of my workplace, just kind of like sport commentary, something that's beyond us, above us, to the foundation of a meaningful life. It's how life is made, and so when we show others that not only is it possible, but it's necessary, and it's the greatest antidote to that malaise and discontent that we're all suffering. The right obviously taps into this super effectively. They appeal to people's lowest and crudest emotions. They harken back to an imaginary past. And as futurists, our work has to be permeated throughout with such brilliant hope that it's intoxicating. Regular people are the force of history. It's the imperial command that we stay inert that is making us feel so, as my dad likes to say, constipated, blocked. Once people start acting, if we do our job properly in being ambassadors of the future, the merit of imagining and working with us will be what transforms consciousness. It's not a very small task. We suffer from a lot of bourgeois, small, petty tendencies. We're quick to criticize others, but we're slow to examine ourselves and how we treat each other in the collective struggle, which is not very futuristic or liberatory of us. So I think people can smell if we say one thing but operate in another way, and how we work on this at the small scale determines how large we get or how small we remain, and how blocked we are.
I think for me, I'll conclude with, instead of talking about blockages, I'll talk about an unblockage. And it's like an unblockage that I've seen from the resistance in many different cases. So like, I don't know if people saw, but Naeem Qassem, the Secretary General of Hezbollah, a little while ago, he had this speech where he was fired up and he was like, Lebanon will never become an appendage of Israel. And then he kind of said, like, as long as there's blood in our veins, as long as we live, as long as we honor the martyrs, Lebanon will never surrender. And it was sort of like, I kind of would summarize that as like hell. The hell you will, you know? And that's like an unblockage. If you think of, you know, Nasrallah's last speech, it was along the same lines, right? It was like, we will never abandon Palestine. There's nothing you can offer us. There's nothing you can give us that will make us give Palestine up. Nothing. And the Iranian military spokesman has said something similar recently, right? Everybody wakes up and they're like, God, please, is Iran gonna make a deal like and sell everybody else out? And he said, we will not leave you alone. We have not left you alone. We will not. Yemen, Yemen got involved in the war a couple of years ago. Nobody asked them to, nobody invited them, nobody asked them, there was no distress signal like calling Yemen. Yemen was just like, there's something we can do and we're gonna do it. And they got bombed for it, and they, their chant was, they're chanting like the Iranians. Their chant was, we don't care. They said, we don't care, make it a big war, we don't care. And so like, there's some kind of unblockage in the face of, this like, we're all powerful and we're imposing this future, to just say, no, we don't care. And,
yeah, they're saying, we don't care, and less bombs falling on Gaza.
Yeah.
Thank you so much to our wonderful panelists. Thank you, Shehad, also for sharing your writing. I hope that this discussion encourages people to take up the question of the future. I'm going to quote Dani, become ambassadors of the future and understand that this really is a central part of the political project that we're trying to execute here. Let's remember that it takes audacity to imagine and then discipline to carry everything out. Miracles are made by human beings. That is what history teaches us. Thanks everyone, and let's make the revolution irresistible for everyone.